Today I have Massimo as my podcast guest. I know Massimo for a long time. We've been studying together at the IE in Madrid, and he's originally from Italy, but he stayed in Madrid somehow or moved back there. And yeah, Massimo, before I talk more about you, how about you introduce yourself? What you're doing right now, whom you're helping, and where you're expert in.
Sure. Thank you, Sammy, for having me. My name is Massimo Pernicone. I'm originally Italian from Milan, though I have been living abroad for the last 10 years. I work as an associate director at a consulting firm called BTS. And at BTS, we are specialists in the world of strategy execution. And I work mainly in two fields, in innovation and in sales transformation for large multinationals. Lately, I've done a lot of work for virtual remote selling for companies in pharma, energy, and other industries.
Perfect. And that's also going to be the topic of our podcast today, virtual remote selling. This is something we all had to start, not because we wanted, but because we had to. And yeah, it's very likely not a fling, but we will talk about that in a second. But before we dive in, let me ask you one more question, Massimo. Tell us something that most people you work with don't know about yourself.
Oh, wow. That they don't know. Probably that work-life balance to me has a lot to do with sport and training. And I think we're quite similar in this, Sammy, right? Because I know you're a free athlete. For me, I always try to trim out some time for some workouts, maybe CrossFit. I'm into capoeira. TRX, I'm using a lot of TRX nowadays, and try to keep myself fit even in lockdowns.
Yeah, you got hit hard in Madrid, so I imagine you have to be creative now when you want to do some sports. You cannot go to the gym anymore. It's really tough. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've become a big fan of online classes and virtual classes. I can even manage to get capoeira classes done virtually, where kind of a professor is staring at the screen and saying, "Hey, Massimo, you should do a bit more of this and of that," and that is working, right? If that can work for a martial art, I think that can work that online setting, virtual setting, also for selling.
Yeah, perfect. And we're going to dive deep into this now in a second. But if you can you name us some of the companies you are helping with remote selling right now?
Okay, some of these are really confidential, so
Of course,
we have an
only if you
NDA
can,
in
only if you
place.
can.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is I'm just finished a work for a very large multinational pharma company from the US in all Latin America to keep the people to become better at selling remotely. And now it's a lot of work with pharma, right? Where is there? They still have a substantial budget. So I can tell you about Biogen, Ferring, as two that I can share as companies have recently done work with and still doing work with.
Perfect. So let's dive deep into it. And yeah, the first question, because we had a pre-interview and I think the questions work well, so why change a winning question? What's a commonly held belief you disagree with when it comes to remote selling?
All right. So I've seen a lot of this. We've seen a lot of things that people believe about remote selling that I disagree with. I'm going to give you a couple of these. First one, I came across a lot of people, even experienced account managers, they believe that remote selling is only temporary. That we will go back to the old good days of 100% face-to-face interaction. And don't get me wrong, I mean, face-to-face interaction is still going to be super important. But what people don't realize is that kind of virtual selling is here to stay. That people are accepting virtual communication channel interaction more and more. And that you can take advantage of it. you can take advantage of it. Actually, even when this emergency is over, become more productive because you don't have to see people 100% of the time. Maybe some of those meetings can be moved to virtual, and you can free up your time and do things that are more productive for you as a salesperson. So that is one, but it's just only temporary. The second one is that people believe that they can just kind of turn on the camera and things will magically work. And that's not the case, because the set of rules that apply in a virtual setting are completely different to what happens in face-to-face. So a couple of things here. One, the span of attention of people reduces a lot. So time shrinks. So you really have to get to the point and capture and maintain the attention of people in a virtual setting. And also distraction is just a step away. Like you can take your telephone, bring it kind of off camera, start staring at it, and the other person will not even realize. So it's really easy to get distracted. You cannot just go with your same speech for a face-to-face meeting, your same slides, and just hope that you turn on a camera and that works. Nope, you have to do something different. Couple more. Thinking that, you built a relationship over time, and the relationship you have with your sales, with your buyer is so strong that it will withstand anything wrong you do online. So people expect quality, and they still expect it in a virtual relationship. So don't take it for granted that you don't need to change, right? The relationship you have is so strong that will protect you. And finally, the last one I'll tell you is that we see that a lot of people believe that your contact, a lot of salespeople believe that your contact is ready to accept a video call or a virtual and remote selling. And that's not true, because we all go through an adoption cycle, and we still see a lot of people that are kind of neglecting that. I need to start interacting with this new technology. So you need, as a salesperson, to really walk people through their adoption cycle. So how can you recognize somebody who is in denial? How can you get them to experiment, taking the first video call maybe, or really trying to having these people adopt the virtual communication channels? Because sometimes you're into it, but your contact is not. So so how do you get them to accept it? And we hear a lot of buyers saying, you know what, come see me when this is over. So you don't want that to happen. That's a huge red flag. You want people to start interacting with you in a new way, and you have to plan for it, and you have to convince them. So don't take for granted that people are ready to accept virtual communication, because many of them still today, they're not.
Awesome. I have a follow-up question there, because you said you have to change things when you shouldn't use your normal presentation, and the normal length of a meeting is probably different online. So do you have 1 or 2 tips on how should you adapt the length of a meeting online, and what you should change in order to make it more appealing and working in a remote selling setting?
Right. So I'm going to give you a consultant answer. That is, it depends. Why does it depend? Because it depends really on a lot of variables. In the pharma industry, where I have a lot of experience, probably 10, 15 minutes. That's how much time doctors are willing to give sales reps. In other settings, it can be longer. So it really depends. It also really depends what the meeting is for. Mm-hmm. As a rule of thumb, I would say that the time shrinks. So you should plan for a shorter time. And you should also plan for finishing ahead of your scheduled time with the person. Because nowadays people are online a lot, into video conferences a lot. So we will definitely appreciate if you can give them back 5-10 minutes of their time.
Yeah.
So it also depends on what you have to say, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
People are really willing to listen nowadays to things that bring them value. So a couple of tips on how to make that happen. So first, don't just check in to say, hey, how are things going? I know the pandemic is hard. You can rely on me. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. But that works once, but that probably will not work over again over time. I mean, you need to bring something to the table and you need to have it clear. So my first piece of advice for you is define very clearly what is your core message. You should have, obviously, you already have, and I'm sure you have if you're an experienced salesperson, an objective for that meeting. So something that should happen as a result if the meeting is successful. That's not new. But probably what is new is that then you should really refine what is your core message. So think about it this way. If a buyer should remember just one thing out of that interaction, what should she remember? And that obviously is something that is aligned with your core message. So for instance, if you want them to start considering your company as a possible supplier, what is that core message about how your product is unique that they should remember?
Yeah.
And you want to have that one or possibly two core messages really clear, because this is all you need to convey. It's not about conveying anything more. Just focus on that one or possibly two things. Why? Because again, time shrinks, so you want to get that message across. So tip number one, really define that core message. Tip number two, I would say bring it to life. Bring it to life in a virtual setting. What does that mean? That there is something called signal to noise ratio that is really important here. So in your slide, in your speech, in the client stories you will tell, in a virtual setting, try to take out all the noise, even more than in a face-to-face setting. So what is noise? It's all those elements that do not build into getting to the core message. So for instance, you might be telling a story about a client. You might say, you know what, I have this client and I've been knowing this guy for a long time and we went to college together. Is the detail that you know this guy for a long time and that you went to college together, is that built into the core message? Probably not. So you should cut it out because that is noise. Consider into what is really important to get the message across. In your slide, are they a support of your core message or what you're telling, or you have distraction elements? Maybe you have a lot of text. Maybe you have columns of different colors in your charts. And again, a lot of text in there. Probably you need to cut things out and simplify, because the moment you show a slide that is very dense, people online disconnect and they start reading. And getting their attention, and getting their attention back is harder than in a face-to-face setting where you're just there, right? So these elements are key. And the third one is, curiosity is what people have, what people show when they're faced with questions that don't have an obvious answer. So you can build on that in your presentation and create some knowledge gaps, things that will be cleared later on in your presentation, but you open that unanswered question early on, so people naturally want to find the answer. And the answer is coming, and you're giving it to them if they pay attention. So these are a few tips that I believe
that are great tips. Especially also like two things that I can all of them, I think we're doing a quite reasonable job at my company. But I remember we started too complicated with our slides, and then we cut out all the junk. And sometimes we have slides with 6 words on it, but they are so powerful because they convey the right message. So I really can say, yes, we should have talked to you a little bit earlier, Massimo. We could have saved some time. And what you said a little bit earlier, I like a lot, because providing value all the time to also people that you may know. So you don't go into a meeting and say, yeah, it's important to have FaceTime. You go into a meeting always with an objective, of course, but also with the objective to provide value, which also in the sales setting always work well. So if you can convey and provide value, even though the product might be maybe not the correct one at this point of time, you started a good relationship, and who knows what's happening down the road. So that's also something that works really well. And the last thing I love is, because that works also in social media really good, this knowledge gap trick. I mean, if you post something on LinkedIn, for example, and you create this knowledge gap where you have the first 1 or 2 lines outline a problem or something, and they have to read on to see the story like fold out and the solution in the end. And that's where you get a lot of interaction. So that's working in more than just selling, but it's beautiful that you mentioned it in selling, the selling setting, and I have to think how we could incorporate it in our sales presentation, because I think we could do a better job there. So thanks a lot for those tips already, Massimo.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Now let's go into another direction. Let's go into the direction of what, in your opinion, should people start doing when it comes to remote selling?
Probably goes in line, Sammy, with what I mentioned just earlier. I would say one of the big things that I see is people just checking in based on their relationship, right? Again, with no added value. There is a saying in selling that goes like, you always get access to buyers. What is really hard is to get re-access. And you get re-access if you bring value. Again, so my best piece of advice here is plan for it. You know, another thing that is different in virtual selling is that the planning stage is even more important. So what does it mean? That you need to plan a couple of things. So obviously the core message, as I said earlier, and what you bring to the table, it might even not be about you selling. It's more about you helping. It's a concept of help before you sell. And the second one is what interaction media you want to use. You should actually, what we teach at BTS is you should have kind of an omni-channel interaction plan. And say, okay, I have these companies, my target, these key people. How am I going to interact with them over time? Maybe you want to have a video conference. That's great, because that is virtuous media. You can see people on camera. You can share your screen and show slides and pictures and videos. But maybe that's not the only media you want to use. Maybe you want also to send a WhatsApp message as a follow-up. Maybe you want to craft an email to capture attention and to make them want to give you more FaceTime in a virtual setting, in a virtual call. Or maybe the time is right for a quick telephone call. And you have to learn how to use this media with the pros and cons to keep the relationship going and building up virtually. And the trick here is that there is really nothing new in using emails or phone calls, but now the objective you use them for is different. Before, everything was led to getting that face-to-face meeting, and the sale really took place there. Now, it's no longer true. So what you need to do is to use this media, to use the telephone call maybe to pitch your product, use that email to capture attention so that you can get that FaceTime. So it's same media and different objectives. And again, that is part of the planning.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I can tell you, I read a study recently about channels used by sales development reps. And one of the most successful but really less used channels is SMS.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I thought, wow, that's interesting. You're mentioning WhatsApp, which is like kind of the same. So it's using a personal channel that is not overloaded like email. LinkedIn is still working in Europe. In the US, it's almost overloaded. You get a lot of messages by bots, and you really have to stick out there if you want to get their attention. But once you have this telephone number and also the okay to basically send something and a personal relationship, I think this is a super powerful tip. One thing that we are also thinking about, and I wonder if you are also advising to use it or at least think that it could be a good idea, is using physical mail, like really sending a letter or sending a present or like going totally offline and doing it the super old school way. What do you think about that idea?
Well, I will tell you, I don't know. I don't know. So I don't see that a lot, but I see the rationale behind it, Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
And the rationale behind nowadays is to stand out and do something different. Um, so what I see with my clients is that you struggle more than before to get attention
Mm-hmm.
and to get to talk to people because we're also busy nowadays in this crisis. So for instance, I get a lot of complaints of, hey, I send emails and I just don't get a reply. I can send even messages, WhatsApp, and I don't get a reply either. So that's a good tip. Yeah. So maybe selling mails, going back to that, it's a good way to stand out, to do something different. And you're really
Mm-hmm.
competing way more than before for the attention of buyers. And going back to what you were saying about SMS and WhatsApp, I think, again, yeah, it's a great way to get in touch, but, that's a very informal way of communicating. So what you said earlier about, yeah, and once you get the telephone number and kind of a permission to use WhatsApp, that's a great way to go. But you need to have that rapport built. You need to have that trust that you can send a WhatsApp message, and alongside you have the message of the wife, the husband, the children of of a buyer, right? So are you disturbing because, hey, why is this guy sending me a WhatsApp? Or that is okay because you kind of earn the right. So a piece of advice is earn the right and the trust uh, before you use too much WhatsApp.
Perfect. In our pre-talk, you also talked about that your role as a salesperson when it comes to online meetings changes a little bit. Especially, I mean, we are talking on Zoom now. You can use different kinds of interaction channels. But what would you say? What do you have to do differently now, or what do you have to learn as a salesperson now when it comes to using, like, let's stick to something like Zoom or Teams or Google Meets?
I think you need to master the technology. You have to become really good at using Zoom, Teams, Hangouts, all their features. Why? Because that's a great tool to bring back that interaction part. And interaction is another way you can use to capture and maintain attention during your sales call. It's even more so if you have more people with you on the call. And that's very common, where maybe you have 2-3 people from the buyers, maybe you have one colleague of yours also helping you out. So what you need to do is to bring back some of that interaction. How? Get creative. Get creative. So, but Zoom can help. So what we do sometimes, if we create polls. So you create a Zoom poll and say, hey, I'm going to show you now a slide about our new product. And after that, I want to launch you a poll so that we really want to know what you guys think. Are you okay with it? And so the poll window will pop up and people have to interact. And you know what? I just gave away another tip. That is, announce the interaction before it comes. So the people know it's coming. People know the poll is coming. And you can do that even with questions. You say, hey, Sammy, now I would like to tell you a story of a client that is very similar to you and to your needs. And after that, really want to ask you what you think about it, because it's a really powerful story. So let me tell you the story. So in this way, you know the question is coming. And so you want to pay attention because you don't want to be taken off guard. Even more so if you're there with some of your colleagues. So you know the question is coming, pay attention. So and sometimes it's these little things. So announce questions and interactions. Leverage Zoom, leverage polls, leverage, we even play around with the annotate function. So we have a slide specifically designed so that people can put a little check mark or annotate text. So that might sound a bit weird, but that is somehow even fun for people instead of sitting back and listening to your presentation. So you really need to control all the different aspects and use them and plan for interaction to happen.
Those are great tips. Thanks a lot. I thought about school. That's like a teacher saying, watch out now, this will be up in your next exam, and then you really pay attention.
Somehow you become even a little bit of a...
How you told it, it's nice.
Yeah. No, I'm saying sometimes you even become a little bit more of a TV personality, right? Like leading a talk show, a little bit, and you want that element to come across, even in how you use your voice, even in a bit more theatrical. I mean, even on how you plan different interactions, even on how you use even different media. That's another tip. So if you just have PowerPoint slide, you might say, maybe at this point, I need to stop my PowerPoint and stop sharing my screen, tell a story, ask a question, then show a picture, then some more talking, then a video. And you want to change media and interaction form every 3 to 5 minutes. And that's another way, but that's another technique that we took away from the cinema industry. Sometimes we call it the Netflix rule, right? Because in series, the story changes every 5 minutes. So you want to replicate that and again, keep attention.
Awesome. Maybe let's come to the last question, which is, in a normal setting, you usually have like in a normal setting. I mean, in a face-to-face meeting, you have some chit chat, and then you slowly warm up, and then you have your meeting, and then at the end you still talk a little bit because you're in the same room. In the virtual setting, I can tell you, I didn't do that quite often. What is your take on that?
Well, my take is that in a face-to-face setting, you really have 3 meetings, not 1. You have 3. So meeting number 1 is from the moment you are welcome, from your walk to the meeting room, until you open your laptop and you start the presentation. So in there is a lot of chit-chatting as people even enter the room. Then you have your meeting number 2. So when you say, okay, guys, let's start. Here's what I want to tell you. You have slides, you talk about business. And then you have meeting number 3. When people began to leave, hey, it was great. Let me walk you until the exit. So we can chit chat even more. And, in a virtual setting, usually meeting number 1 and meeting number 3 are lost. And you just get that meeting number 2, but there is a lot of value and a lot of insights and understanding in meeting 1, the before meeting, and meeting 3, the after meeting. So what can you do? Again, plan for it and make it happen. For instance, if I have a meeting with you, Sammy, and I know you really well, and you are bringing in 3 more colleagues of yours. So what I might tell you is, hey, Sammy, why don't you stay online with me for 5 minutes once your colleagues leave, because I would really love to debrief the meeting with you and even ask you how is life going. So bring it back, make it intentional. So you get that informal chit-chatting space after that. You can do that even for meeting number 1 and say, hey, I know your boss is coming, and And I'm a bit undecided on what client story to tell him or to tell her. So why don't you come online maybe 10 minutes earlier? We chit chat a little bit. I tell you the two client cases, and you tell me which one you think will resonate more with your boss. So there are ways to go back to this kind of informal setting, and that's powerful. So try to make it happen. Try to make it part of your planning.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Massimo. So a lot of value bombs you already dropped here. I can tell you we have a lot of learning to do here in my company, and I'm pretty sure that you provided a lot of value to all the listeners we have. Um, so how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more, or just have a chat and see what you can bring to the table and how you could help their companies?
Sure. Super happy to just chat and share more experiences with all the viewers. So the best way would be through my email. That is massimo.pernicone@bts.com. Right? So
Yeah,
I'm sure you're gonna put that
can,
in kind of a chat or whatever of the.
yeah.
So
We
no
will
need
put
to
it in the
spell
show
it.
notes. We will put it in the show notes so that you can find Massimo. And I will, if it's okay with you, also just put in your LinkedIn address so that people can directly connect with you. So we have SaaS companies, law firms, management consultancies, and some other kind of companies that are like not companies. I mean the owners and the C-level executives and the sales representatives listening, because you before that in the beginning you mentioned that you mainly have biotech right now as a client, but you also have those other companies,
Absolutely,
correct?
absolutely. So if not me, my colleagues. So now it's a bit a matter of coincidence and chance, but we. I can tell you this because I do a lot of work with Hewlett Packard Enterprise in the tech. We work with EY in professional services and other large professional services firms. So yeah, absolutely. That's also part of what we do.
Perfect. And if I want to hire you, what are the core 2 or 3 things where you can help me?
Oh wow!
No,
You mean
just hire.
about?
No, like 1 minute. Top 2 or 3 things where I say, okay, it's like sales training, it's like ABC. It's just so that I get our listeners get a feeling on where you could bring value.
So just mentioning sales transformation, because we do more obviously than BTS, but just sales transformation. Couple of things. So one is bringing your sales model into the virtual era. So we do that a lot right now. We are not just a training firm where you get kind of off-the-shelf training. Not at all. So we really want to be something customized for you. So what we can do is really take the way you sell that is really unique to your company, your strategy, your culture, and bring that to virtual. So complement it and pass the message across people. So what we tend to do in the process a lot is nowadays to codify what your great salespeople are already doing. Because I'm sure in many organizations, you already have that 5, 10, 20 people that already get it, that are great, and get it in the way that is specific to your company, again, your strategy, your context. So how about we combine what we've learned so far and we've seen that work with what your great salespeople already do, virtually or even not virtually. And we codify that and we make that as a document, kind of as a playbook and available to all the others so that they also can benefit from that and kind of close the gap and everybody can become excellent. And then the last thing we tell you is just starting to do work nowadays about hybrid selling. So that situation where the lockdown maybe it's eased and you start to get physical access again to your buyers. But how do you best combine, how do you combine the best of both worlds, virtual and physical, and how we can help you make your salespeople more productive in this new hybrid selling setting?
Awesome. Yeah, that really painted a good picture, and I can tell you I may be coming back to you. on 1 or 2 things for my own company. So
Whenever you
thanks a
want.
lot for your time, Massimo. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, I'm sure we will stay in touch.
Yeah, hopefully we can catch up again soon physically. It's been a while, so hopefully that's going to happen
Definitely.
soon. Thank you,
Definitely.
Sammy.
Yeah, goodbye.
Bye.